A friend of mine suggested the name Smash and Grab for a concept that I use for scales. I love the name because it is very catchy, so I'm stealing it with his permission. So here is a special shout out to Wacko. The idea is like this. Let's say you really want to understand what the C major scale is. You use both hands to grab all 8 of the notes, and then you smash them all down at the same time in one big mush. Why is this so effective? Why does it work better than other methods? The answer is that when we see this, we see the whole scale as only one thing. You can only do this on keyboard instruments like piano, organ, or harpsichord. So this makes the piano absolutely ideal for visualizing structures. I recommend to students that they get all 12 major scales this way. First, you want to smash and grab them to see the pattern, and then you can play the whole scale very quickly in a blur. Next, you want to play the scales in octaves. Use the sustain pedal to make the sound legato. Why is this such a good idea? Why play octaves? What is this going to get you? The answer is that it frees your mind from fingering. You don't have to worry about which finger plays which note. Just use the thumb and pinky of each hand and then go up and down the scales. It is a great exercise to loosen up your wrists and make sure that you have mastery of legato pedaling. So use smash and grab to get the shape of each major scale in your head. Then play the scales in octaves to check to see if you really own each scale independent of the fingering. And that's it. This is truly the end of the basic story. And if you can play all of your scales with smash and grab and in octaves, you have something very solid and very, very useful. Now it's time for the rabbit hole. Why is it useful to use conventional fingering to learn your major scales? How useful is it to learn any kind of scale with conventional fingerings? Is this as important as most traditional teachers make it out to be? I have an answer that most teachers are not going to like. If you spend a lot of time learning major scales going up and down multiple octaves with both hands using conventional fingering, you are practicing something that you aren't going to use very often. I know it's true that there are such passages in all sorts of music, but for every time that both hands are doing exactly the same thing, there are probably 100 times when this is not so. For instance, it is very common to have scales going up and down in the right hand while the left hand is doing something totally different, like chords. For the same reason, you will often find that the left hand is doing complicated scale patterns while the right hand is doing something totally different, again, often playing chords. In this case, the fingering you have carefully practiced hands together is not going to help you at all. I'm not saying that you should not learn your major scales in both hands. It is a useful skill. I am simply pointing out that it is not a skill you're going to use very often in music. So I am suggesting that if you want to do something very practical with major scales, or for any other kinds of scales, you want to spend most of your time mastering these scales hands separate. And then as soon as possible, you want to start playing music that uses them in creative and unexpected ways. So use Wacko's smash and grab to visualize scales as complete systems, and then use this skill to understand what is happening in your music. And most of all, use this skill to physically master your music much more quickly. And most important, use this skill to physically master your music much more quickly. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Leave me comments about anything you like, comments about anything you'd like to see in the future, and remember that I consider all suggestions.